This is Talk to Seattle, and I'm your host, Jason Rigden. On this episode, I have Jim Pugel, who's running for Seattle City Council in the 7th District. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you for having me on.
So could you tell me a little bit about yourself, maybe your background and experience?
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Seattle, 59 years old. Last 35 years, I've been in police work. 31 years of that was Seattle Police Department, and the last 4 years was King County Sheriff's Office. I've also been involved in a couple of nonprofit boards. In my earlier years, I helped coach my children's little leagues and CYO basketball. And I'm fortunate enough to have my 3 children and 2 grandchildren still living here in Seattle.
And what made you want to run for this office in particular?
Part of it was I have time. I love the city. I think the city has a lot of challenges. Some of those challenges will never go away, but they have to be managed. I think with my experience in dealing with challenging issues, and not only challenging, but sometimes emotional issues, I can bring a pretty broad swath of experience, having been a police officer, a police commander, a police chief, having worked with really diverse groups, not only gender or class or culture or race, but religious groups, and coming to a mutually agreeable solution that if we cannot solve the problem, we at least manage the challenge that is facing us and causing everyone grief, uncertainty, or sense of insecurity.
And could you tell me a little bit about your district?
Well, it's made up of Pioneer Square, downtown, South Lake Union and Belltown, Queen Anne, Interbay, and Magnolia. It coincidentally is the identical geographic footprint of what is called the Seattle Police Department West Precinct, which is a geographic area that I worked as a officer, a sergeant, a captain. I actually managed that geographic area for about 3 years as the West Precinct commander. So I got to know some of the people, the community groups, the business groups, the different organizations, the nonprofits, everything that makes that area that I just described such a rich and interesting area to work in and also visit.
And what are the biggest challenges facing your district?
Well, I think it's the same challenges that are facing Seattle as a whole, and to a degree, the region. And I say that not only hoping to represent the district, but having worked both in Seattle and King County, the challenges are the same. It's just a different municipality or form of government. Those challenges are, of course, homelessness. And within that homeless population, there's a lesser subset of addiction. Addiction is certainly not just within the homeless. Certainly some of those who are well-housed and well-employed are still addicted. We have mental illness issues that are much more manifest in the homeless or unsheltered population. We have transportation issues. And of course, what I'm hearing a lot, at least from the folks who live in Magnolia, Interbay, and Queen Anne, is zoning. How far should upzoning go? Where should it be? And how should it be planned for and managed?
What can the city do to help homeless folks?
Well, the number one is prevention. That comes in a number of ways. Let's make sure that we attract good businesses that pay a living wage, one where a person pays no more than 30% of their income to pay for rent or to own, to ensure that there's an adequate stock of less than affordable housing, and then market rate housing for the different folks that choose to live, whether they rent or own.
So what are some of the ways the city can help improve our transportation system?
We'll continue to listen to the ridership, track the daily migration of people, whether they walk to work and or whether they bike, whether they transport in carpools, in commuter vans, or on bus or light rail. So the transportation system is multifaceted, and we have to monitor those. And not a single one of those does the city council or even the mayor have immediate and full control over. So we have to maintain good partnerships with the different entities that run those different transportation systems. Certainly the city has control over the quality of the sidewalks and the quality of the roadways within the city limits of Seattle. I'm witnessing more and more, having lived on Queen Anne since 1991, an ever-increasing amount of people walk to work now. Downtown Seattle is the fastest growing residential population in the city of Seattle and has been for the last couple of years and will continue at a rate of increase in residential population that surpasses any other area of the city. So a lot of people are choosing to live and work in the same area. Others live on Lower Queen Anne or the Uptown neighborhood or on Queen Anne, and you can witness them either walking or biking to work down in the recently last 6-7 year developed South Lake Union Belltown area.
And what can the city do to help improve housing affordability?
Well, they've been struggling with it, as we have witnessed. If that was easy, it would have been done by now. It's not. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Certainly, developers want to make as much money as possible on the development of property. Property is expensive. We have to, now that the different legislation has been passed with the city council, the mandatory housing affordability ordinance, see how much money is deferred through the fees that the developer will pay if that developer chooses not to include the certain percentage, 10, 12, 15% of their new development for low or market rate housing, to ensure that there's a adequate housing stock for those who cannot afford the Class A or the high-end type of residence that are traditionally being built. We can also take advantage of some of the recent legislation that was passed last year at the state level that allows us to convert public properties, whether they're regional authorities, whether they're city, county, or state government property within the city limits, convert that immediately, that is surplus property, and have that developed. We also have to take advantage, I think, what's being done out in Magnolia at Fort Lawton with the conversion of the part of the former Fort Lawton military detachment, converting that to, I believe it's 135 different units of housing for formerly homeless veterans, formerly homeless seniors, also those who are making 60 or 80% of the area median income, working with the nonprofits to help develop those housing, and then for the housing that requires it, helping manage the housing that will require assisted living, or what we also know as supportive housing.
We live in very polarized times. How would you as a city leader work to bring people together?
Well, it's something that a police officer has to do. A good police officer, she or he, is continually trying to bring peace and maintain that peace in different neighborhoods. Some areas it's easier than others. Whenever there's growth, whenever there's change, there's a group that has been there for a while that is somewhat resistant or uncomfortable or just does not want to see the change for whatever reason. It could be financial, could be emotional, could be based on rational or sometimes irrational understanding of what the challenge is. But I have experience in working with, not necessarily always bringing different groups together, but working with those different groups and getting them to focus on what the real problem is, what the real challenge is, and what we can negotiate to ensure that we keep managing the unavoidable growth that not only Seattle, but the region and the urban areas are going to continue to experience for the next 20, 30, 40 years, and plan ahead for that.
And if people want to learn more about your campaign, where should they go?
My website is jimpugel.com, otherwise www.jimpugel.com. If they would like to get a hold of me, my email is jim@jimpugel.com.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me, and good luck in developing your audience. I'd like to hear from them.
You've been listening to Talk to Seattle, and I've been your host, Jason Rigden. If you want to support the show, why don't you follow us on social media? We are at Talk to Seattle on both Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for listening.